Faith, Truth, and Tolerance in America. This was a speech delivered on October 3rd, 1983 by Senator Edward M. Kennedy, also known as Ted Kennedy. I was originally drawn to this speech after I had the opportunity to attend the Evening with Justice Neil Gorsuch here on BYU's campus. As part of that program, they played a video where Senator Hatch described his civil friendship with Senator Ted Kennedy despite their political differences. So as I was searching for a speech to research and study, I was drawn to Ted Kennedy's name. I hope I can convey how cool this story actually is. It's really the story of two very different men. First, you had Ted Kennedy, Democrat, and known for being a very liberal Democrat. He believed in the strict separation of church and state. He was also a Catholic, and also the brother of President Kennedy. On the flip side of this coin, you had Jerry Falwell Sr., who I hadn't even heard of before researching this speech. He was a Republican, he was a televangelist, one of those people that goes on TV and preaches. He was the founder of Thomas Road Baptist Church, and he was founder of Liberty Baptist College, which is also known as Liberty University today. They changed the name. And he was co-founder of the Moral Majority. He opposed the strict separation of church and state, which was actually contrary to the traditional Baptist norm at the time. You would think, after looking at these two men, that they would have a lot of similarities and that they would agree on a lot of different things. But actually, it was the opposite on this particular topic, on religion and its influence on government in the United States. As I mentioned before, Ted Kennedy believed in the strict separation of church and state. And even though he was a Catholic, a lot of his socio-political moral views differed from those of the Catholic Church, which was a bit controversial. On the flip side, Jerry Falwell Sr. was the co-founder of the Moral Majority, which I didn't know what that was either because it was before my time. They were really heavily involved in mobilizing conservative Christians during the 1980s, and they had ties to the Republican Party. It was founded in 1979, and scholars think they played a big role in winning a lot of political victories throughout the 80s, which they did. Their whole premise was involving Christian morals and having those closely interrelated with government actions. They wanted those things to be tied together. So Ted Kennedy is invited by Jerry Falwell Sr. to come speak at this event at Liberty Baptist College on a topic that most people in the audience are going to disagree with Ted Kennedy's view. But he starts off his speech in a very skilled manner. Something about his tone is very engaging. He's respectful, he is funny, which I found really enjoyable, he's engaging, but also he's powerful and he knows what he's talking about. But he starts by disarming the audience because he knows that there's going to be differences of opinion. He says things along the lines of, I realize that my vision may be a little controversial. And if we look at this yellow one, I know we begin with certain disagreements. I strongly suspect that at the end of the evening, some of our disagreements will remain. If I were in the audience, I feel like that would put me a little bit at ease, knowing that, okay, this man knows that there's going to be disagreements. He's prepping me to have that emotional frustration that we don't agree on what's going to be said. And I'm going to show you the green one in person from his speech because it's really funny.
In honor of our meeting, I have asked Dr. Falwell, as your chancellor, to permit all the students an extra hour next Saturday night before curfew. And in return, I have promised to watch the old-time gospel hour next Sunday morning.
All right, so he's disarming the audience. If you know that you have a crowd full of students Why not give him an extra hour of curfew? It looked like Jerry Falwell Sr. didn't even know that he was going to say that. He looked a little bit surprised. But as you can see, he's prepping the audience, and the audience is ready to listen. Even if they disagree with this man, he came across like he was on their side. He was funny, he was engaging. That said, there was still a fundamental disagreement with the subject matter of the speech. Jerry Falwell Sr. and the moral majority, many of the audience members presumably belong to the moral majority, disagreed with Senator Kennedy on the involvement of religion in governmental affairs. This quote encapsulates part of that disagreement. The real transgression occurs when religion wants government to tell citizens how to live uniquely personal parts of their lives. Ted Kennedy said that during his speech. They disagreed over how much influence religion should have in government. But Ted Kennedy, knowing that there's that disagreement, couches his points of disagreement in euphemism. He strives to kind of lessen the tension, so to speak, with quotes like, separation of church and state cannot mean an absolute separation between moral principles and political power. So he's acknowledging that, yes, I don't think religion should be as involved in government as you do, but even I acknowledge that we can't completely divorce morals from what the government is doing. Or religion and religious values can and should speak to our common conscience. So maybe religion shouldn't be imposing its will on the people, but yes, religion is obviously going to have an effect on individual people's beliefs, and that's okay. Or the third one, in drawing the line between imposed will and essential witness, we keep church and state separate, and at the same time we recognize that the city of God should speak to the civic duties of men and women. And that's how he organizes his speech right there. He uses 4 line drawing tests to decide when religion is becoming too involved in government decisions. First, he says you should respect the integrity of religion itself. Second, respect the independent judgments of conscience. Third, respect the integrity of the public debate. And fourth, I really like this one, respect the motives of those who exercise their right to disagree. In his view, these are the line drawing tests you should use to decide when religion is starting to impose too much upon the state. Now, but what is the actual lasting importance of this speech? Because honestly, I had never even heard of this speech before I researched it. It has to do with the simple fact that most people in the audience disagreed with what he was saying. Jerry Falwell Jr. was actually in the audience in his 3rd year of college, and he listened to the speech. He was later quoted, because I believe he's either the president or the chancellor of Liberty University now. He was later quoted as saying, when he spoke to Liberty University students, he was well received, and even though the students did not agree with much of what he said, they were polite and kind. That's, in my view, the lasting importance of this speech. That Senator Kennedy was able to walk into a crowd of people who he disagreed with, deliver an opposing viewpoint, but still do it in a way that promoted civility. And in fact, that was his goal from the very beginning of the speech. In the very beginning, he said, but I also hope that tonight and in the months and years ahead, we will always respect the right of others to differ. That we will never lose sight of our own fallibility. That we will view ourselves with a sense of perspective and a sense of humor. Civility was the lasting tone of the speech, and I think that's what came through. Thank you.